Hey guys, so regular subscribers will know last year.
Current pace 18 minutes. Heart rate 145.
Oh, there's a bit of tech interrupting. So regular subscribers will know last year I got into cycling and keeping fit, but as the weather gets worse and it gets darker earlier, I didn't really want to be out on my bike around London, so I switched over to running. And you might think running, put your trainers on and off you go. To an extent you do, and a lot of people do. But you know me, I wanted to see what tech there was I could use. So thought I'd make a video about it. So we're going to kick things off with what is essentially for me kind of the hub, the sort of the brains of all the technology that I use. It's the Garmin Forerunner 735 XT. You don't have to use a watch, obviously you can just use your phone, but the difference or the problem I had with using my phone was it was in a pocket or it was in a belt or it was in something where I couldn't particularly see sort of the information about my run. And to me, I know a lot of people, again, probably don't want to know this when I go out and run, and that's it. But then what's the point of having all this tech if I'm not monitoring it? And with the watch, you can get all that sort of information on the screen while you're running: the distance, the time, the speed, the pace, the power, which we'll come to shortly. Now, one thing I realised quite early on is the screen on the Garmin 735 XT smudges quite easily. So I picked up a reasonably cheap screen protector and actually made a big difference. It made the screen a lot clearer and more visible. Then here we are sort of with the watch in action. I've not mentioned yet the watch was about £200, so it's not cheap, but for me it made a massive difference when all of a sudden I can see my distance, the time of the run, the pace, the power, and in this case I can scroll through different screens which I set up myself. A lot of them have a sort of a current pace or heart rate or something, and then the average pace or heart rate, and you can scroll through. So if you see on this screen here, at the very top is the distance in miles, 0.97 miles. On the left side there is how long it's taken. The right side would be a live updating pace, and the bottom would be live updating power, which we'll come to shortly. So that's measured by my Stryd. The Garmin will also, after the different runs, if I want to, I can check my VO2 max score, and if I want to, it'll tell me how long I should rest for, basically, before running again. So as I say, it's not essential. This obviously will pair through your phone to an app to keep all the information, which will also in turn pair through to Strava, which for a lot of this stuff is kind of quite important because Strava is usually the sort of overall hub for your activity. Then I'm going to move on to the next piece of tech, which is my Stryd Run Pod. You can see some of the sort of details and information on the back of the packet. Now this cost me £188. It is quite expensive, and to be honest, there are cheaper things that will do similar. Like I believe Zwift, I thought that was a button in the middle. It's not, it's just a LED light, but this does do more than most and apparently is very accurate, so well, what the hey. You can see how it will pair with your phone. The first thing I then did is check if there was a firmware update, which there was. Then once you're all updated, you basically clip it on underneath your shoelaces. Now I want to point out, I'm not actually at this point, I didn't realise I've not actually got it clipped fully. I don't know if you can see there's a little bit of a gap at the bottom. Do make sure it's properly clipped in, because as you then go running, what you don't want is your £188 Stryd flying off into somebody's garden, never to be seen again. But yeah, basically you clip it on, you connect it into your watch, and you need to obviously add a sensor in the watch, and it will hopefully detect the run pod, and it will detect power and things like that. You then have the option of putting power on the watch's screen, which if you wanted to nip back and see, that's what is in the bottom portion of my watch. And it's normally, you would hope, around kind of 200 to 300 watts. And so therefore, it's interesting because a lot of people, well, one way of judging your effort is your heart rate, but that's kind of a delayed reaction. If you put in a big burst, it might be 10 seconds or so, 15 seconds or so before you realise that you've put in a big burst and the heart rate starts going up. The idea with this is you will see the change in power like instantly if you happen to be watching, so you will know straight away if you're perhaps overexerting. So whilst there is an app, I don't use it much. I don't find it as well laid out, as helpful. There's just not as much space on your phone screen, I suppose. So I use the website, and this is stryd.com, and it's, I don't know, power center something or other. But stryd.com should get you there after you log in. Now we're starting off on my profile page. Most things have kind of a link to an explanation. How do I get my critical power? Or the definition of critical power, in fact. So you can go and check those out. We're not going to go through all of that just now. Some of the bits that I like. My favourite bit is this power duration curve. And again, if we bring that up, you can give a bit of an explanation there. But basically, it takes the most powerful bits. I say powerful as in the amount of watts that you're using to run. For, in this case, the time, through the time of my run. So literally this morning I did my second Oak Hill Park run, and look at that, the first 5 seconds were the most powerful of any run I've done yet. And then it switches over to a run I did a couple of weeks back, and then from just into the last year, and then as we get to the sort of 6:15, it comes back to this morning's run, and actually I sustained more power that far into the run. And you can see the further out you get, the sort of quicker the time changes. And even looking there's a little bit where there's 5 seconds on, it goes back to my first Oak Hill Park run, which is quite funny. Then it comes back to the second Oak Hill Park run, and then that park run finished, I did a 27:30 basically, so that's where that power ends, and it goes into, it goes back to the first park run because that was slightly slower. Then we're into a different run. So yeah, it just gives you, I've only done one particularly long run, there it is. And it works out, in fact we can turn on a sort of a model of what it thinks my power is. So clearly I'm lacking then after, 27 minutes, but that's where most of my 5Ks are ending, around there. But I'm really dropping off, so that's something I should try and work on a little bit, I guess. Training distribution, look, we've got some more. I'm generally not doing well compared to other Stryd users. So here is the Oak Hill Park run, for example. And we get all kind of stats and figures, the amount of power so I'm running, my pace, and we can turn these on and off, cadence look, heart rate, ground time. This is quite interesting. Now, so this is basically how long my foot is on the ground for. Vertical oscillation look, see how that changes, generally 8 centimeters. How crazy is that? I don't know what air power is, and I'm not sure how I get an explanation of these ones for that matter. So that seems to be very tightly linked straightly to the actual power though, so I'm not quite sure what that bit is for. And then if we get a splits for the particular run, we can set what type of run it was. I'm never really sure what, I mean it's almost a race. I kind of take it as a race if I'm honest. And you can say how, I mean it was, my average heart rate was 169. I was pushing it quite hard, I thought. Although, yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time up in zone 4. Look, not bad. Map box just to see where the run was. Look, I did. Yeah, that's where you start. That's where you finish after 2 3/4 laps. We can change it by distance, all that kind of thing. We can share it. I'm not too worried about that. So yeah, and then there's this running stress balance. Now, my only problem is that not every run is on here, because if I do a virtual run, it's not going to count it. This will only be when I'm outdoors running using, or rather connecting the Stryd in through my watch. And when I do a virtual run, although I'm using the Stryd, as I'm going to explain shortly, it's not to monitor my power, or it's not, the power isn't saved in Strava. No, the reason I would use the Stryd indoors on the treadmill is so that it can connect in with Zwift. So I've used Zwift quite a lot for cycling, which is basically a sort of virtual world. You connect to your, well, when you're cycling, it's your trainer in, and you virtually cycle around, I don't know, be it New York, be it Yorkshire, be it London, be it Innsbruck, wherever. And it's very clever. It adjusts the power or the resistance of the trainer to simulate hills and such. Well, you can jog around on Zwift with the use of a foot pod like this. Now, as I've said, there are cheaper ones. I think you can get them for about £40. And I've heard the Stryd is more accurate, but how much more accurate do you need it to be? In fact, it's kind of funny because if I run a 5k with the Stryd on, the Treadmill thinks I've run like 5.2k or 5.15k, but Stryd are adamant that theirs is more accurate. They've sent me links showing like, this is how we work it out and this is why it's more accurate. Fair enough, no problem. I'm not going to argue. It's just wanted to make sure I'm not getting diddled out of a couple hundred meters. But yeah, basically it lets you run on the treadmill because the foot pod relays the information back to my phone, which is running Zwift. I link that in with a heart rate monitor, and I've got most of the information that I need to run around virtually and track the runs, and for them to then sync onto Strava. So depending on your setup, you might then need something to hold your phone. Alternatively, your watch might be enough. You might not bother taking your phone with you, but I do use the phone still for streaming music. And previously I've used a belt, but what I found, it was a bit difficult getting into the belt. And I really worried I would drop the phone when I was running. So the good people at Freetrain sent me their unit, which will take my phone and my keys. So with both of those in place, off I went for a run. It's kind of a one-size-fits-all, and even though I've lost a lot of weight, I'm quite a big guy and it fits me no problems. It's really very comfortable. When it's on and you run, you don't really notice it. Although there's a little bit of movement of the phone on the front, you can see in the video, you don't feel that when you're running. I guess it's just because it's in time with all the rest of it, everything else jiggling at the time. And it really is very comfortable. It is quite handy as well. The plastic screen works through touchscreen. So if I, in this case, wanted to swap from podcasts over to music, no problems at all. What I did find, because I guess of the screen over the front of the, the plastic cover over the front of the screen, I should say, it didn't always recognize, or it didn't recognize at all, to be honest, when I would lift down the flap. So I would have to turn it on with a power button at the side before I could start operating it. There may be some settings I can put in there which kind of tells it to, maybe it's because it's on pocket mode, which in theory will stop the screen from coming on while the device is in your pocket. So perhaps you have to just turn that off to let it wake itself from the movement. But as said, generally it's a really very comfortable piece of equipment. It's only $19.99, which isn't a huge amount. You're going to pay that sort of amount for a belt, and I do think it is a better option, so check it out, the Freetrain version 1.
But the most important thing is that you get out there and exercise. Don't worry if you don't have any of this tech, you don't need this tech. All you really need is a pair of shoes, trainers, running shoes. Just get out there and exercise. So, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, do subscribe. And check out some of the other videos on my channel. I've still got another 3 or 4k to go. I'll see you all again soon.